From Toronto to Tokyo, and from Phonia to Syrinx, this is The Basement, your companion to the Ready Player 2 novel. Join our host each episode for complete chapter breakdowns and deep dives into the pop culture references through a series of challenges and homework assignments. The Basement is the Ready Player 2 podcast for people who love things. And now, please welcome Albert, Will, and the rest of the Gunters for this week's episode. Hello, Gunters. You are in the basement. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 0000. Maybe you have one too many zeros in there. Is it live or is it Memorex? We are here to take on the second chapter, I guess, of Ready Player 2 novel after coming off the high that was last week with Cutscene and having Ernie Klein on the show as our special guest. And speaking of special, with me, as always, is our very special co-host, Mr. Will Wilkins. Will, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Well, happy December the 9th to you, Albert. How are you today?
I am outstanding. I've spent probably the last part of 10 hours researching everything there is to know about Memorex. And so I'm excited to finally be able to share all of the wealth of knowledge for the one pop culture reference that was found in this chapter that we had not covered.
So I know historically you've been able to give the gong when I've gotten into subject matter that I'm not really interested in hearing, or you're not hearing. Do I have the same? Do I have like a gong card where I'm just like, dude, there's no way we're going to string this show out talking about Memorex. But I'm going to warn you people right now. I've seen the prelude to the show notes. It's going down. You're not ready for this. I'm going to say once we get to about the 45-minute mark, we're going to be in danger.
Got it. It's at least like 30 minutes of discussion of Memorex. And I was surprised because I was thinking there's no way we're going to be able to squeeze a lot of content out of Memorex. But, oh, my friend, did I find some nuggets of pop culture to share with you in part with all of you lovely listeners and viewers tonight. So
nice. Hey, well, today I'm repping The Last Jedi, as you may have noticed. I don't know if you watch any Star Wars films or familiar with the franchise at all.
A little bit.
I am also representing your other podcast, Cantina Cast.
Yes, thank you.
Shout out to all those guys up there. But today in history in 2017 was the movie premiere, the Hollywood premiere of The Last Jedi. It was also the date in 1965, the premiere of A Charlie Brown Christmas. Which was better? I'm going with the latter.
Charlie Brown Christmas?
Hey, Rotten Tomatoes agrees with me.
I've seen...
I don't know what a Charlie Brown Christmas has as a Rotten Tomato score, but I do know that The Last Jedi's audience score is 42%.
Well, I actually really like The Last Jedi. It took me a while to get there, but I've probably, in all fairness, have seen Charlie Brown Christmas way more times than The Last Jedi. So,
I'm not sure why you're not doing that podcast.
Yeah, we probably should do that. Yeah. All right, well, let's do this. We're going to, so what we thought we'd do is get into the pop culture references that we didn't get to get on through with Ernie on the show last week. There's just a couple things about that show, and just kind of in full disclosure. So Ernie was on a short period of time. He actually went into overtime with us, and I think if you listened or watched, you saw him say, no, let's just keep going. So we went on way longer than he was anticipating, but I did want to be sensitive to the time, and so as we were going along, Will and I had already talked about this, that at some point, if we've got to roll it and get moving on, that we were just going to cut this stuff and we'll either do a bonus show or bring it back for, the next show or whatever. So that's exactly what we've done. So we're going to cover the last three things that we didn't cover from the first chapter or from Cutscene. Then we'll roll into the narrative for 0000, and then we will spend the last 2 hours talking about Memorex. So that's what you have to look forward to. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight, watching the live stream. And certainly if you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe to that. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then lastly, I did want to make mention, we did give the book away. So what happened there, because I saw some of the comments, people were like, this is a scam. We didn't get our book. And no, it wasn't a scam. I promise you. What happened is, again, we were trying to get off the air because Ernie had to go, right? And I guess we could have dropped him, right? In retrospect, I wasn't really thinking about that. We could have probably let him go and stayed on and do all that. But the problem was YouTube had, once we ended the show, there was a message that came up on YouTube Studio, right? And it said that it was going to be at least 3 hours before all of the comments were on there. And if you remember, there was comments flying left and right. And so we didn't have a full list of everybody that had put big bucks, no whammies. And so all that to say, it wasn't until the following day around 11 a.m. that finally all the comments were listed or in the channels, and I was able to actually aggregate all of that, put it into a randomizer, and pick someone. So so thank you again for everybody's patience in that. We did give we've already mailed the book away. It's to a winner out in Mexico. And I'm trying to, I didn't put his name down here.
Wasn't it David? What I thought was cool about that is Ready Player 2 hadn't come out in Mexico yet, so he'll have a copy that isn't sold in country. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean when is that coming out? Do you know?
I'm not sure why you believe that I know what's going on in the Mexican book market, but
well,
I mean, I travel down there for work.
You travel down there a lot, so
yeah,
I thought maybe you were,
I don't know, Albert. You're Mexican. How come you don't know? Have your people tell your people.
Sorry. So,
in all fair, calling you Mexican, is there anything less racist?
No,
I can call you.
It's fine. I mean, whatever. It doesn't bother me.
That's from The Office. That was an Office reference.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Was it Dwight or was that?
No, it was Michael Scott talking to Oscar. It was during the cultural diversity episode.
Oh, that was one of the
where he's doing the Chris Rock jokes.
Yes.
They should just show that at the corporate office as training. It should just be required.
Here's what not to do. So Mighty D was the winner. So congratulations to Mighty D. It's been mailed off. I don't know how long it takes to get to Mexico. I imagine it's like months.
What is happening now?
I don't know.
Like,
it's international.
I'm not sure if a small burro will be taking that across the Sonora plains before it arrives at your restaurant.
Oh, I hope not. It's probably one of my relatives on these things doing it. So. No, it's on its way. So congratulations to you. Excited that you got that book and that it's signed and you're going to get it before everybody else. So go rub it in everyone's faces down there. So congratulations again, my D. Okay, let's get into our pop from leftover from last episode. That's not what I want to do. I want to do this here. And we're going to start with this one. So you brought this up. I mean, we talked about Synapse Overload, and I said Overlord. I'm still kicking myself for that one. But what was the... I mean, I know you'd found it in Pathfinder, which is a great game, by the way. It's hugely successful, more successful than I thought it was. A lot of these, not to wax RPG history, but hey, you know what? We've got plenty of time to talk about stuff tonight. There's a number of like expansion kits and expansions and just campaigns that come out for Dungeons and Dragons, and there've been hundreds, if not thousands, over the years, and a lot of them don't do really well. Like they come out, there's a big, everybody goes and buys them, they get kind of bored, or doesn't just really, and they kind of default back to the original campaign settings. But this is the one that I feel like has had legs. Like it's been out for a very long time, and it continues to come out. They've done everything from now board games, and there's all kinds of supplements. The world has completely expanded and grown, so it's been a huge success, I think, at least from my perspective and opinion, in terms of campaigns that are not, official TSR campaigns. But now that I've said that, tell us about the reference, and then from, I guess, Pathfinder, and then from, from the novel, Ready Player 2.
All right, so for those that didn't watch the show, thank you very much, because we did skip over a lot of things, which meant that, as several commenters pointed out, there was a good 16 minutes where I was just smiling like an idiot into the camera. I didn't actually say anything because we kept skipping my sections.
Yes.
All by design. But mainly because Albert skips over all the science parts, which are my favorite parts of the book. When I look at, clearly, and I think Albert did a really good job of summarizing this on the Pathfinder RPG front. But for me, this is really about the science. So going back to the actual quote from the book, the reference is, tampering with or disabling your INO headsets built-in security safeguards to exceed the daily usage limits can result in synaptic overload syndrome and permanent neural tissue trauma. And so really not about the RPG. It was just a nice nod, and I know you love talking about RPGs, so I thought I'd throw that.
I've already said my piece. So it's all you know.
I've got nothing on this. I mean, I really just want to get to the science.
All right, we'll move on to the science then.
So what I love about, and you heard me mention this in the show, what I really like about Ernest Cline's writing is that he does something that old school Michael Crichton used to do. So if you read books like, and not just Jurassic Park, but the DNA Imperative, if you read Congo, any of his old work, what he always did was he based a novel on near science fact. He would take a piece of technology and then look at how that piece of technology might evolve in the future and what ethical dilemmas that piece of technology could create. And I think that this one science/pop culture reference really summarizes what we're going to be talking about in Ready Player Two. And from a scientific perspective, it's really about synaptic fatigue or neural hyperactivity. And if you look at the diagram, Albert, if you can see that basically when a synapse fires, what happens, it's a cyclic process. So as a synapse fires and is released, it has to be absorbed. Once it's absorbed, it is pushed back into the ether so that it can be regenerated in order to create another synaptic firing. But if you have too much neural sensitivity, when you get to the point where you're getting so much sensory information that your synapses can't
like
up.
now, like right now.
No, you would be excited in this example.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be bored.
That's not what I'm feeling. Keep going though.
Me, I'm getting it. Like you're not feeling the synaptic firing.
I don't know if you noticed, but my left eye is twitching like Clouseau from Pink Panther. Every time you start talking about this, keep going. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
So as it starts firing, and you get that when you have too much exposure to, say, lighting effects, or you've got too many things going on that you're able to process when looking at, say, a VR image that has just sensory overload, your synapses can't keep up with that cycle. It causes your brain to basically hang, right? And at that point, you're not going to be able to think clearly. It's going to affect the involuntary neural functions, including blood pressure regulation. So this could theoretically lead to confusion, stroke, heart attack, and death, just as it's portrayed in the book. So this is...
I'm feeling some of those right now.
Hey, just to let you know, this is different than the early warnings that you would see in VR for like the Nintendo Virtual Boy back in the day, which was causing headaches and fatigue and nausea, dizziness.
Yeah,
but that was not due to synaptic fatigue. That was a product of either motion sickness for not having depth perception in the image, or which is scientifically a mismatch between our visual and our vestibular systems, right? Your proprioception is off, so it makes you dizzy. It's why it had the timer on it. You could actually engage that for kids. What's different about the book and the science is that there are a number of factors that impact synaptic fatigue, right? It's not like you could just set some clock and say, it's 12 hours, as it is in the book. I don't know if that's a spoiler, right? It would be based on a number of factors. Age is one of them. So when the first VR came out, like for the Virtual Boy, they said kids shouldn't be using it longer than 7. If you look at the VR headsets for the PlayStation, and I've got a little cut of that, they moved it. 7 years old was the age that shouldn't be using it. Then it's 12, and I can't recall what is in the book. Albert, it's like, is it 18? That they're trying to get the limit set for how old you need to be before you can use the ONI.
Yeah, I think I
thought it was 18, and they were trying to move it to 21, right? Like Artemis was trying to move it to 21. And she was using this same rationale that the neural development of youth is different than that of people who are fully developed, and that's going to end up causing problems. So it's not just that, but if you have neurological development issues like plasticity, you have any pre-existing neurological conditions, but you wouldn't have to just, again, be married to that 12-hour clock. There's a number of drugs that exist today that can suppress the hyperactivity caused by those neural triggers, and you would be fine. You would just have to continuously get doses of this while you stayed in the oasis. So it seems to me that you could make this work without bypassing the system. So what do you got on that, Albert? How you feeling? What's the
All right, let's talk about Tears. Let's talk about Tears for Fears.
Come on!
Oh man, I don't know. This like makes Memorex shine now at this point. Like I'm so happy about Memorex and what I was able to dig up at this point. No, it's all very interesting stuff, man. Yeah.
Hey, look, I'm telling you, I think Ernie would have been down to talk about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, he would have.
I mean, you have to do it's almost, from my perspective, the anchor of the scientific theories that's being presented within the book, right? So it would have required a decent amount of research to get through. Just like Jurassic Park, there was a bunch of work on bioengineering and DNA mapping, all of the exciting things that we don't get to talk about all the time here.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on. Let me, I'm creating something real quick. I'm just typing a few things out here that that you guys will appreciate here. So let's see. There we go. Does this guy know how to party? So that's all I got to say to that one. Yeah.
Well played, Trebek.
Okay. And let's talk about your other reference. And this is the one that I really want to talk about this one because this is like one of my favorite songs. But let's talk about Tears for Fears. Everybody Wants to Rule the World.
So the reference in the text is, a synthesized female voice prompted me to speak my passphrase. I recited it slowly, being careful to enunciate. Everybody wants to rule the world. All right. So if you don't know this song, you're probably listening to the wrong podcast. It was released in late February 1985. This Tears for Fears chart topper was written by lead singer and co-founder Roland Orzabal.
Orzabal.
It's like Orzabal.
Parzival.
Oh, really?
Orzabal. No. That's a stretch. Go on.
So originally the song was going to be called Everybody Wants to Go to War, as a statement about the Cold War era and the impact of propaganda issued by both nations. So it wasn't like a pro-America patriotism thing. It was more about both sides of the aisle are just an absolute mess. Yeah, I said aisle. Same thing today.
Yep.
So, yeah, pretty interesting. It's just another one of those songs, and we've talked about a couple of them when we were reviewing Ready Player One. That was like a last-minute add to a highly successful album. This time in Songs from the Big Chair, a 5-time platinum album that also spawned Mother's Talk, Head Over Heels, I Believe, and Shout.
Yeah.
All right. So, Albert, if you were looking at this, and this is, it's got like 8 or 9 tracks on this entire album. Is this the favorite song for you on here, or
yeah, probably. I would say between this and I don't know, Head Over Heels is pretty good too, and then Shout's another one that I'll sing along with every single time it comes on. But yeah, this is probably my favorite. And when we talk about 80 songs, a lot of times we like to talk about what kind of memories it conjures up for us. In this song, at least where it conjures up more memories about where we were. Nothing specific, right? Nothing like, oh, this is where I fell off a tree or out of a tree. But it's like I remember where we were living, and we had a radio, and this was a song that was on the air a lot, and we were all crammed into, when this song came out, we were all crammed into a single room living with my aunt and uncle. Here we had just moved it was pretty recent. We had just moved to Texas, and so we didn't have a house. We were all in one single bedroom, all of us, which was crazy, but it conjures up memories of listening to like radio at night with the windows open because there was no AC, and just like all these like physical feeling, emotion, physical memories, I guess, more than anything. But yeah, this song, and same thing with Mickey. For whatever reason, I have this song and like Mickey. They weren't on the same year, but it's just it takes you back. So it's a very fond. I've had very fond memories. All that said, because it just reminds me of coming to Texas and being here for the first time, and this whole new adventure that we were about to go after living in Michigan for so long. What about you? Yeah. What's the song do for you?
So for some reason, this song singularly reminds me of the Dennis Miller Show, only because it was the intro to that talk show, and it was on all the freaking time. And this thing got covered about 1 billion times. The song was featured in dozens of movies and TV shows, including like Hunger Games, Real Genius, which we've talked about many times on the show. Straight Outta Compton, which has had 0 mentions on this show. Of course, Ready Player One, the movie, ER, Riverdale, The Wire, Mr. Robot, Malcolm in the Middle, and Numbers. Right. So a more important question, Albert, and I was trying to do some research on this. Did these two guys invent the curly mullet?
Yes, I think they did.
Because there were other mullets out there, like, George Michael had a quasi mullet at one point for a short period of time.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a flowing locks of Barry Gibb-esque mullet. It wasn't quite this curled look that Kurt and Roland are rocking.
Yeah, no, they definitely had it going on. And like they were pioneers, because if you think about this style, there was a lot more in the late 80s going into like the early 90s. This thing was people were still rocking this type of a look. So well ahead of their time without.
Yeah, these guys, interesting that these weren't Silver Spoon kids. They both grew up as council estate boys, which is the equivalent of saying in the U.S. people that were living in Section 8 housing. So they grew up together in Bath, UK, and they really struggled to work together most of their professional careers. In fact, it led to a number of tour cancellations, even when they're at the peak of their career. It's crazy. Hey, did I throw any of the lyrics up there by chance? Did I give you any lyrics?
Yeah, you did. But I just want to shout out to Darren Chris because his version's pretty awesome. And the Weezer version also is pretty.
Yeah, the Weezer version is
as well
outstanding.
Yeah, you put this up there.
Hey, so I put this up here so we could do a little lyrical analysis. You want to read that? Just the first couple of bars for us? Can you do that without infringing on someone's copyright?
Yeah, I can do that. Welcome to your life. There's no turning back. Even while we sleep, we will find you. Acting on your best behavior, turn your back on Mother Nature. Everybody wants to rule the world.
The fact that you can read that without singing in the proper pentameter is impressive. Like, how can you not just
welcome to your life?
Yeah, I was impressed by that. So what was cool about this song is the catchy new wave synth kind of disguises the intended cynicism of the song and what it was really intended to convey, which also included beyond just statements about the Cold War, but Orwellian messages about government control found in other RPO-themed movies that we've covered, dystopian films such as THX 1138, 1984, most notably, etc. So do you think that Ernie included this in the book, this song, because of that connection, or simply because it's got a sweet beat and you can dance to it?
Yeah, it's probably the latter.
Yeah,
because I don't think it was a theme for Ready Player 2. Was it? Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it could go both ways. I mean, you gotta give him credit, right? Since he threw it in there, but I can see it both ways.
Yeah, I actually lean toward that only because it seems like this was a pretty well. It's not like this is some conspiracy theory. You know, the band has openly talked about the meaning of the song, and it's reflected in their video. So you're not the parts where they're just on stage singing together, but there were cut scenes at one part where they were putting in images of war and that kind of thing. But
I mean, if he wasn't so like conscious about some of the songs later out, like throughout the novel, right? I mean, he very much was conscious about what songs he was picking and why. I mean, every time the needle dropped. You got to I think you have to give him credit and say this was purposeful here.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this, but Joe Strummer, who is a member of the Clash, actually confronted Roland at one point in a bar when they were in the UK, saying, "Hey man, you owe me money. You freaking stole my song," because he had written a song that the first lines were "Everybody wants to rule the world" about 3 years before this song was released. So Roland actually paid him £5 and said, "There's your payment.
£5.
Buy yourself a couple of pints." True story. I read it on the internet.
Yep. So it has to be true. Absolutely.
That's all I got.
All right. Well, let's talk about The Matrix. I know we touched on it very briefly, but I want to get into some of our favorite moments that we didn't get to touch on. So, this reference is haven't any of you watched The Matrix lately or Sword Art Online? Plugging your brain and your nervous system directly into a computer simulation is never a good idea. So this was obviously a movie that was written and directed by the Wachowskis. It stars Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne Moss, Hugo Weaving, and Joey Pants. And let me give you the summary. Did we read the summary?
We didn't, but you know what? I'm another impressed. You know how much respect this movie got? No one got some silly nickname. Everyone actually got the actor's name in the description right there. It wasn't like you said, it's
the guy from
it's
Point
Ted,
Break.
and it's you're not just going through all these.
Well, that's because I haven't read the summary yet. Set in the year 2199, Ted Theodore Logan is a human battery by day and night, but in his mind, he's known as Neo, a computer hacker who lives in what he thinks is 1999. He, along with most of the other human races, are enslaved by Skynet 4.0. Their bodies are harvested and used to produce bioelectric energy needed by the sentient machines. But in order to keep the humans alive, they're jacked into the Matrix, a simulated reality modeled after present-day 1999. In the future, Vinnie Livermore, who was once searching for Bobby Fischer, is now looking for Neo, a.k.a. Ted, who he believes is the one, the chosen one who will save humanity from the machines as prophesized by a charming cookie-making grandmother known as the Oracle. Vinny, along with Dominatrix Trinity, Francis Fratelli of Astoria, Oregon, and several others free Neo from enslavement and share the grim news of their real reality. By the end of the film, Neo has learned to supernaturally manipulate and control the simulated reality, which climaxes in a fight between he and several enemy programs known as agents, one of them which is a free world program named Agent Smith, who wants nothing more in life than to kill Neo. The film ends with Neo as the sole survivor of humans inside and outside of the Matrix. So guys, the Matrix, I've always said this is a movie that it's kind of like, and I think I maybe mentioned this on the show, but it's like Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark. You talk to people about it, and everybody remembers when you saw it, right? It was that, I think, and again, I'm only speaking from my opinion, but in the close nerd circles I have, but it feels like this is one of those movies where everybody remembers exactly where you were or where you saw it or what the experience was like, and for a lot of different reasons, right? Technically, this movie was doing things that had never been done before. Even stylistically, the aesthetics of it, right? This is where we first got the whole trench coats and sunglasses, and
I think Blade would have an argument there.
yeah. No, I'm not saying that there weren't other
You literally
movies.
just described Blade.
Yeah, I just described Dark City too, right?
Oh, that's true. I love that movie.
Which is a great movie, and a lot of people compare this to Dark City and pit those together one another. You know, whether one was better than the other and that sort of thing. But we're not going to do
they
that.
shared some set pieces too, if I'm not mistaken.
They probably did.
Films.
Yeah, I mean, so again, it wasn't. There were certain things that I think it broke ground on, but a lot of it wasn't, right? A lot of it was familiar themes and things that we probably had seen before at other places. So, what do you remember most? I guess for your experience, were you in the military when this one came out? This is 99, so you.
Yep. I was
had just left then.
No, so in 99 I was in Korea, so I probably watched it on base. I remember when this came out. I mean, for people that were proper nerds, this was basically it, right? This was your film. They finally made it. Somebody made this film. It was like the best parts of every other film. So, like you, I don't think that they're, from a story perspective, which is really the Christ story. It's not original. The elements aren't original to it, but at the same time, they're structured in such a way that it feels new. And the cinematography was brilliant. Some of the tech that they had, just building out the bullet time camera sequences, all of that was just incredible. And it felt like the special effects, even though it was high on special effects, weren't there for the purpose of the effects. They literally drove the story. It wasn't like you see a lot of action films today where it's just kind of dressing. It's hiding the story. It just accentuated it. This was a great film.
Yeah, no, I would agree 100%. I mean, and it's held in such high light with a lot of people. I did want to talk about that scene in the top right hand corner there. I'm showing the first time we see Trinity jump up and do the flying kick to the head, and we get the whole camera swirling around, that kind of thing. I remember when this trailer came out. I think it was a trailer or there was a preview or something, and that was just like, it was money, right? Everybody was hooked on this alone. And as part of the research when I was reading this, when they showed this as far as a demo, they threw a ton more money at this whole project and the film itself because they were excited about what they were viewing. So, and it's the same experience that we had with this, and then Bullet Time a little bit later. But again, visually, they were doing some pretty cool stuff. On the left-hand side, I'm showing the Digital Rain. That was probably everyone's screensaver by the year 2000, right? Your screensaver, everybody was downloading this and installing it. I was working in IT at the department, and I remember when we shut the lights off at the end of the day and those things were fired up. I mean, everybody's computer, you would just see Digital Rain coming down. So it was kind of a neat thing to see with that many computers running. That other moment here, and this is the one that creeps me out even to this day, where that thing crawls into its belly. And he's got his face, and at that point, I remember just the experience of having, I went into this movie with really not a whole lot of understanding of what the heck this thing was about. I mean, their whole tagline was "What is the Matrix?" Right? That was kind of it wasn't the slogan. I guess it was the tagline. Yeah. What is the Matrix? And it was all over the bulletin boards, and it was all over newspaper ads and TV commercials, and I didn't really have an understanding what was going on, but I remember during this scene, I was thinking, what in the world is going on? Like, how is this? Like, am I in a magical movie now? What's going on? And that's all part of it. That was part of all of the mystic and the allure of the movie, and not knowing what we were about to go undertake. But this one really creeped me out. The fact that something goes into your belly button, it still gives me the shivers.
Yeah, that's the best scene. In terms of where it got me into the film, it was that. Because before, I felt like I was watching, again, Dark City, like you'd
Yeah.
mentioned. It's like, everything from, the themes to the way they were coloring the film, all of it felt. But as soon as this entire scene,
Yeah.
and virtually every scene with Agent Smith, where he's just, I mean, the lines are brilliant. As you can see, we've had our eye on you for some time now, Mr. Anderson. It seems you've been living two lives.
It's funny. I was reading. He did that accent, or he did the voice, the dialogue that way because he wanted to sound like he was trying to envision what a program would sound like, and he didn't want to just come across as a normal speaking person. And then the other actors that went on to play agents just took their cues from him and just to stay, uniform. But that was all Hugo Weaving. It wasn't originally written
Really?
that way. Yeah. Which is cool because that is, like just like you did right now. I mean, it's iconic. Anybody that says that, hello, Mister, we've been expecting you, or all that. Everybody, that was a terrible line, I know, but yeah, we all do it. We impersonate him. Everybody knows who you're talking about when you do it. So it's a statement for him. But this scene up here too. I mean, this is another iconic one about the red pill, blue pill. It's meme central. There's tons of stuff that you see that being used for even today. And this whole sequence too really blows your mind because this is the part where what's his face? Oh my gosh, not Neo. What's Lawrence Fishburne's character? My goodness.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, so he's telling him what's going on. He's explaining what's happening in the Matrix, and he's giving him this. I mean, it's kind of blowing our minds as a viewer at this point in terms of what's going on, because this is our first reveal that they're well into the future, and this is not normal everyday world. And then we get when they finally I guess disconnect him. Yeah, Morpheus. Thank you, Terrence. Sorry.
Oh, Terrence. I was just going to let him just sit there every so often. You just got to let Albert wallow in it, because even though he's talking, I know that's all he can think of is what's his name, what's his name, what's his name, what's his name. I'm just going to sit there. Go, bro. Just go. Go do it.
Thank you.
Let him.
That's for gonging you every single show. But yeah, with this whole scene of him unplugging and just all that crap in his body and the way the special effects were. I mean, the practical effects, they weren't really special effects, I guess, but practical effects. And it was just disgusting to think that. And this is something that, like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's beyond possibility, right? Like, if we get enslaved, could we not just generate? Can we not be batteries?
No.
We can't?
Cannot be batteries. No.
Oh.
No.
All right.
No, it's there's plenty of nerd groups out there that say that we can't be batteries, and this would never work, and here's the reason why. So one of the things that came out of The Matrix, and the timing of the film was perfect, was 99. The internet was really starting to take hold in, like, the average person. I would say before 96, people that were really on computers all the time, people that were using Merc and all kinds of stuff like that, it was just a really small segment. This is, by this point, a wider audience had reached the internet. It was far more accessible. So this is where you started getting people's fan theories at. And this is the first film I can remember that was like that, where people were posting their theories about it, and people were fact checking the film and saying this couldn't happen.
Yeah.
But then what was awesome is somebody actually came back and said, yes, I get it. In this reality, humans can't be batteries. But we're basically in a matrix below the matrix, where we've created this reality wherein humans can't be batteries. But in the real world, you can be a battery. And that is a ridiculous, awesome explanation that basically retcons any issue that the Matrix has with facts. Like, you could just do it.
Yeah.
So just a little point for you. I was going to save you on Morpheus eventually, because it does have a tie-in to both Ready Player One and into the film itself, which is, it's formed from the ancient Greek, right? It means literally form, but in clearer terms, it's really representative of the god of dreams or the god of sleep.
Yeah.
And there's another fan theory that goes around and says, Morpheus is actually working for the other side. He's the god of dreams. He's the one putting people to sleep. He's the one recruiting people into the first layer of the Matrix. Well, beyond the first layer of the Matrix, into the second layer of the Matrix. A theory that was actually explored in some of the later terrible films that I don't want to talk about.
Oh, I think you mean the sequel films. So more of the favorite moments, the whole karate scenes, right? I mean, they're doing Bruce Lee movements here. It was a combination. They had is interesting as part of the research. They had they had one primary person, but they had some really real people coming in and training. And I forget the guy's name now that trained them, but he was really upset because none of these guys were in shape when they went to do like all the practice. They had the moves down, but they were always winded. And so he spent a large portion of his time not only training them, but getting them physically conditioned so that they could actually do these scenes without having to cut every 10 seconds because everybody was winded all the time. So he said they were all completely out of shape. But these were real martial art moves. They had the real deal on there. I mean, you wouldn't probably expect anything else, but yeah. And then we got the whoa, right? This is all Keanu Reeves doing his thing, his bit there. And I really like the Oracle. Like I thought she was awesome in this movie for a lot of different reasons, but she's a very talented actress. There is no spoon. I mean, this movie is just chock full of one-line quotes, right? I know Kung Fu. That was, people were just, I don't know, we were saying that anytime. It's like anytime you learn something now, after this, you were saying, I know Kung Fu. But I always wonder too, like, and I guess they do cover this in Ready Player 2, and I don't want to spoil too much, but especially if anybody's not read the whole thing yet or what. But, if you think about like the next level of augmented reality, virtual reality, I think it really is something along this lines. It's kind of close and hand in hand with what we're talking about here, and certainly within Ready Player 2. But not only just being able to experience something, but if there is a way to suddenly give a person not only the experiences visually and through all your senses, but then like upload like these memories and upload the knowledge in like matter of seconds. That I feel to me is like, I don't know if we could ever tap into that, but and here they do it as a a program.
But more importantly, and I'm sure we'll discuss a similar topic later, would you want to?
Well, yeah, that's the question, right?
Yeah, because I would think that if everybody was drinking from the same well and was able to process information from a singular well, it does mean that theoretically it's a good, right? You could sell it as an inherent good. Everybody could have all the information they needed, but all that information that you'd be receiving, regardless of its source, would be obtained from someone who was subject to some level of their own cognitive biases, right? Yep. Where there is virtually no objective writing anymore. Everything is bound by somebody's predispositions and attitudes. So it would, in my opinion, strip away the diversity of the culture. I think you could do it for one-off things, but let's say that you just wanted to freaking head load all of our 7-year-old kids with all the information through college so that they could start working on issues. Well, what's that going to do for the social construct? Because nothing can be just boiled down to a simple matter of objectivity. I think there'd be problems, Albert. I'm just saying.
No, I think there would be too. And that's you're right on the money. I mean, it's about, can you objectively upload data and knowledge to someone? And I don't think you can. I mean, it's going to be skewed in some way, right, to some factor. But if you could, then you could, like, what if you took 1,000 people and just gave them just the facts on physics and then allowed them to be their own person at that point, but take that knowledge? I mean, you're exponentially, theoretically, you're exponentially increasing the chances that they're going to be able to take that, and because of their own cognitive nature and the way they think and all that, they're going to be able to move forward and move the ball forward in terms of coming up with new theories and solving problems and all of that. So
I kind of disagree with that too, because I think the process of innovation, and I know you and I have talked about this before, is about the balance between science and art. So let's take just IT work, for example. If you were working in an IT field, and I know you do, there's two types of people in the world: those that went to school and were educated and taught what the process was to install software, to build software. And then there's just learned themselves, just sitting in their garages. They were kids, they were tinkerers, building their own machines, building their own code from scratch. Those people, in my opinion, perform better as innovators, exponentially better as innovators than those that went to school, because the school teaches you the box, right? And so you have this finite knowledge of how something works. And when you troubleshoot and it doesn't work, you don't have the ability to think autonomously about how you're going to fix it. So innovation to me is the product of that. It's the artistry and imagination where there is no box.
There is no spoon.
There's no spoon either.
No, I get it. I do. I guess I see both. I think it's a numbers game too, I guess is where I'm going at. If you punch a bunch of people, maybe the odds are in your favor that you're going to be able to innovate. But I
don't know. I think they'll all be strong at the end in that discipline, but they'll also all share the exact same weaknesses and perspectives that will make it difficult for them to innovate. But you can pitch that one to Ernie. It's Ready Player 17.
Yeah, let's see what he says.
It's further down the line.
Here's the bullet time scene. We've talked about that. I mean, that was just we'd never seen anything like that on television, right, or on the screen at that point. The digital rain scene was another mind-blowing one where he was able to see it. I mean, you can't get excited. Your adrenaline can't rush enough at that point because you realize that, he's now supernatural in some way, right? I always thought this helicopter scene was really great too, just the way it was shot. Again, it was a lot of the same cam work, same techniques, but just a different perspective of it. And then, obviously him at the very end stopping bullets. It's like, okay, it's game over at this point. And it always led, like after that scene there, you always thought, well, how could they even make a part two? Like how could you even challenge him at this point? Like what, if he can do all of this, then the movie's over, right? There's no reason to make a sequel, and yet they did. But they made a third movie too.
Yeah, they did.
But yeah. Let's see. So we talked about this. We won't talk about the soundtrack. A lot of great 90s bands, obviously, that were on there. Reloaded and Revolutions. And so I know where you stand on these movies. I know that you don't like them. I actually do like them. I mean, they're not my favorite. There's all kinds of holes. It really deters from a lot of, from what we got in the original one, it doesn't even feel like at times it's the same universe, right? Or the same, I don't know the best way to explain it.
Well, it's technically, at least one of them's not in the same universe.
Technically, yeah. So, but I do enjoy these. Like I even after the second one, which I thought was, I think the third one was, well, I don't know. Again, my opinion, the third one was better than the second one. But I still, after the second one, I still wanted to go see the third one. I mean, this is back in the day when we were standing in lines, and you couldn't buy advance tickets, and you had to wait in line to buy your tickets, and then you had to wait in line to get into to the theater, and then you had to wait in line to actually get into the actual movie theater room itself, and saving seats and all. I mean, I went through the whole thing for midnight showings for like both of these, and I really enjoyed it so much that I ended up getting a couple books a couple years later for Christmas. I toyed around with I think I've got it here. I did the Enter the Matrix game for the GameCube, I think it was GameCube. And then I did Matrix Online for about 4 or 5 months. It really wasn't my thing. It was real buggy, had a lot of problems, and I was playing a number of other games like World of Warcraft at the time, so it was really pale. It really paled in comparison to what was going on in World of Warcraft. But and then the Animatrix, like we talked about with Ernie, I thought that was a really great one too. There's some of those stories a little bit slower. The pacing's kind of slow. Some of the writing's not that great, but it was kind of cool to see the different perspectives of it. So, I mean, overall as a franchise, I do like it, but I acknowledge there are definitely some big issues with both the second and third one, especially coming off the first one. But
yeah, make no mistake. I mean, I like those movies. It's just a significant drop off from the first one. Kind of like what I was talking about when I was describing the first movie. The way that they use special effects advance the story. In the second and third, I didn't think that was the case. In the second and third movie, it felt like they were trying to demonstrate just how technical they could be, and in the process, they failed miserably. Like the Agent Smith fight scene, that is terribly dated. If you watch it, where he's doing the clones and they're fighting in the schoolyard,
yeah, right.
It looks terrible. It looks like PS3 graphics. It is no good. And for me, that really took away from the movie just being, this is a great, great film. If The Matrix existed all by itself, I think it would be considered probably one of the top 3 science fiction films ever made. And I think what drug it away from that was the other 2 films. And I respect what the Wachowski brothers were doing. I love, I love philosophy and theology and all the elements they were trying to put in there, but it felt overwritten. It felt not pretentious, but ostentatious in the writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a huge fan of how they approached that.
They also did the Matrix comics, which were pretty good. Again, not for everybody. The writing wasn't that great, but it was just cool to see more of the world and how things were working in the background. They did 2 volumes of this. There were a number of comics, and then they put them into trade paperbacks. I think some hardcovers as well. So volume 1, volume 2, and then of course, as we mentioned with Ernie, I think December 21st or something like that next year, 2021. They are releasing The Matrix 4. It does have Keanu Reeves and Carrie Ann Moss both coming back. Lawrence Fishburne is not coming back, nor is Hugo Weaving, so we won't see Agent Smith. They've got another person now who's been cast as the villain agent. But my guess is they'll probably have some connection to Smith, or at least we'll find out what his fate was, or he may play a role in it, much like Halliday, I guess, or some.
Yeah, I'm really excited about The Matrix 4, but primarily because there's a conspiracy theory out there that says that, and after they release these first, images from the film, that Keanu Reeves' character Neo lives in the same universe as John Wick, and John Wick is just one iteration of Neo as described in the third Matrix film.
Oh, interesting.
Awesome.
I can see that happening too, because John Wick is a pretty cool dude.
Fantastic.
So just quickly on trivia, I don't have a lot here, but the Matrix obviously was, well, it wasn't obvious, but the Matrix was a term that was created by William Gibson back in Neuromancer back in 1984. So it wasn't, a lot of people were like, oh, they stole that. Well, no, it's like Ernie said, they just, they build their stories on the shoulders of other giants that had come before them, and this is kind of one of those stories. In the box office,
that was actually in the Neuromancer notes.
Was it? I think we talked about that, right? The budget was $63 million. It went on to make $465 million worldwide. So, I mean, talking about a cash cow, $400 million plus in the bank, based on that alone. And then, we talked about all the other stuff in terms of.
Yeah, no way it wasn't getting a sequel. It's the same way that I look at, Ready Player 2. I know Ernie's modest and he's like, well, I don't know, these things in Hollywood go on. We've got COVID. It's a math problem.
Right.
You can't sell this many books and not convert it into a movie. I'm sure that I'm probably sure I could do some research and figure what's the best-selling book in history that was not made into a film. And it's going to exist somewhere far, far down the line from where Ready Player 2 already sits.
One, and it's not necessarily a best-selling, well, I guess it's a best-selling novel. I mean, you can probably look it up. But there is a series of books, and there are a lot of them, that I've always wanted somebody to make a movie, and I just cannot for the life of me understand why it's never been done. And it's the Dritz Jordan, the Forgotten Realms trilogy by Robert Salvatore. It's a great story, and those characters are iconic, and we've talked about them on the show when we were talking about Dark Elves and Drow at one point back in Ready Player One stuff. But they've never done anything. I know they made several attempts to create Dungeons and Dragons movies. One had one of the Wayans brothers in it, and it was just a big mess and terrible in a lot of different ways. So didn't really count. But you think about how many books that guy's written of that character, and it's just shocking and surprising to me that no one's brought this to put in front of somebody. Another one, Rendezvous with Rama, Arthur C. Clarke. It's one of my favorite science fiction novels, and that one has been I think it was Morgan Freeman has been trying to get that one off the ground for a number of years with his movie company, and I don't know the current status of it, but those are the two that I'm always looking for somebody to go, oh yeah, there's finally a movie coming out. So, okay.
Interesting.
It's really not. All right, let's get into our chapter, and this will be kind of quick because we've, there's really, again, not a lot of pop culture references in here, but chapter 000 opens up with Wade experiencing Ready Player 2, or the ONI system, for the first time. He comes to Anorak's. He comes in back in Anorak's study, which is where he left in the previous chapter, and he discovers the location for the real egg on level 42. He immediately notices a huge difference in, I guess, what we spoke with Ernie about in the last episode, right? The idea that if you're in the Oasis with the virtual headset on, that's one experience, but this is something completely different, right? He can feel like the air in his hair. He can feel his feet inside of boots and just kind of like the comfort there of as well. He says he can smell old books and candles burning. He feels the fine details of wood grain, the weight of the apple, the depression of it when he squishes it, when he bites into it. He could even taste the apple. Right, this is all next level stuff that he had never experienced. Then he experiments with pain, which I thought was again, I won't give anything away, but he experiments with pain. He does the tongue test. He bites his tongue. He can feel the pressure, but he doesn't really feel pain. And then he goes so far as to take his blaster out and shoot his toe or foot. And he said it feels more like a I think it was like a sting, is what he said there. So nothing really painful though. So those are obviously safety features that were put in place here. And then this is where it gets really interesting. He pulls up his HUD and he's got new options, right? He's got the ability to do racing, skydiving, surfboarding, and then he can do kung fu as well. And he realizes that as he's doing these, it's another different experience in that he's actually, he can see himself on the surfboard, right, when he's surfing, and he can feel the ONI device on his head while he's surfing, and he looks down, he's got breaths, and he can feel everything this person's feeling. And we'll get to this in a little bit, because there's a difference between these two types of sensations, or these two types of realities that you have now with the ONI system. But let's just talk about this. So it's really the difference between a sim versus a rec. So a sim is when the ONI program has been made within the Oasis, right? It's been simulated, and so they can only I get the impression they can only go so far. But if it's a rec, then someone has put this device in their head, and you're getting everything that they're feeling in every possible way. And so that feels even more immersive, if you will, compared to just somebody programming what they think or what they want you to feel. So very different experiences. But this goes back to the question here we were talking about earlier. I mean, if you could do something, if you could have either one of them, whether it's a sim or a rec, have you thought about what you would want to experience if this existed today, and why?
Yeah. Well, I think if I wanted to do a rec, I would like to embody Jack Palance during the sword fighting sequence of Hawk the Slayer to see just how tired he was during that fight scene. Because I'm sure he was. I want to know what his bones felt like every time that he got hit with the sword, like what it was like to get kicked in the face by the dwarf. I just got to know how all of that went down. That would be awesome. No, I'm just kidding.
You probably hear him repeating the mantra of how much money he's going to make on this to keep himself motivated and going to get through the scenes.
I just got to make it to Curly.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think from a sim perspective, no question, I would certainly want to do a space shuttle launch. Growing up, it was my dream to be an astronaut. I wanted to go to space camp. I didn't live in the kind of family that could afford to send kids to space camp. I wanted to be Joaquin Phoenix in the movie Space Camp. I wanted to have a robot buddy like he did to send me in space.
Max, friends forever.
But yeah, that's probably what I would do from a sim perspective. From a rec perspective, it's actually probably, I would like to see an artist create a work. Like if it was like what they were feeling on the rec side. Say when Henry David Thoreau was writing Walden, for example. Like, did he know he was writing like something that was just going to transcend his lifetime, or was it just to him like, hey man, I'm just chilling out here in the back, I'm hanging out in the woods, writing me a little book. I think for me that's probably the most fascinating is I'd really like to get the experience of what were people feeling when they were creating things that were amazing. Did they know it, or was it just happenstance that they went through it? I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
How about you?
No, I honestly, I thought the space thing myself, and it's crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, just that the adrenaline rush and what that must feel like, launching, strapping yourself into, a bunch of explosives and hurtling at crazy Mach speeds, that's got to be like the ultimate high. But yeah, and then just being out in space, right? All of that experience and the weightlessness and just your environment, and again, like you. I didn't necessarily want to go out into space, but it is like the one thing that, I haven't never done, probably will never do. So being able to experience that.
So I don't know if this ride is still here, but in Epcot Center, if you go to Disney World, there used to be a ride called the Space Shuttle Experience, where it was 4 at a time. You strapped in, it was like you were in the space shuttle. It was full immersive experience, and you actually got to pick what level of intensity you wanted the ride at. Like, in the highest setting was supposed to be the most realistic, but you couldn't hit that button if you were pregnant or you had a heart condition. And at the time I was with child, so I moved back to 2.
I didn't know you had a child. So congratulations. Oh, your wife was with child.
No, I was too scared to push the 3. So I wimped out at the last minute.
Yeah, right. Okay, so he runs through a number of wrecks, but then he stops short of anything sexual because he feels like he's cheating on Samantha, and then he completely logs out of the Oasis. And there's a great passage that ends right there at this section. It says, "I reached up to touch my face. Reality didn't feel any more real than the Oasis had just felt to me. My senses couldn't discern between the two. Halliday was right. The ONI was going to change the world." And I thought Ernie did a really good job of making the case for just how indistinguishable reality is from the Oasis at this point with the ONI. And I didn't feel leaving this chapter that I had to suspend disbelief in any way, right? Like, I think he does, and that's kind of what this chapter is about. It's really about him making the case that from here on out, I need you to understand that that things are just, it's completely indistinguishable. And I thought he did a good job of that throughout all of this. So we get into the background now in this chapter about the tech itself. We learned that this research started 25 years ago, like right around the same time the Oasis launched. It was kind of like this Black Ops project that was going on, clandestine thing that no one was really knew about except a very close circle amount of people. The program was called the Accessibility Research Lab, or the ARL, which Ernie just casually threw out there when we were doing the interview last week, which I thought was kind of cool. But the original intent was to allow people that had physical or severe physical disabilities the ability to control their avatar and partake in the Oasis. It's kind of started off as humble beginnings, but essentially this was put together by a think tank of all these neuroscientists, and he got the best people in the world. They got together, and that all led to the science of putting surgical implants for people to be able to control their avatars. And then the next step of that was then to do like the dermal contact where they could just put it on their heads, like we talked about with Strange Days and Brainstorm, right? So similar to that. And then I thought it was interesting too, like that Halliday siloed all of these departments, right? He didn't really allow them to kind of work together. He was kind of quarterbacking a lot of this stuff, and that was obviously by design, because we learned that he shuts the whole project down and calls it a failure once they've reached the goal of being able to create this technology again that would be indistinguishable from reality. So let's jump ahead, because this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier too, because they also talk about Sensoft, right? So this idea that they were able to run these ONI files that people were creating through some kind of a sensor software or censorship type process to weed out anything that was, what was the word he used? I'm trying to remember in the novel, but it was basically policing these things, right? Anything that was illegal, unsavory, ethically or morally not right, all that stuff was getting weeded out. But the question that was, and I wanted to pose this to Ernie, but we were kind of out of time, and so I'll pose it to you because you're the next best thing I got here.
Wow, thank you.
If you were
I'm the only one here.
That's very true. If you were in Wade's position, right? Think about putting yourself in that position. And now, I know he was younger and all that, so you can certainly make that argument. But if you were in his position, would you have released this? Because I'm like, even me, I don't know. I guess I would have too, right? Somebody that young, that naive, I would never release this now. But what are your thoughts? Would you do that? Not without some kind of safety net, right? Without safeguards or bumpers in place. It just seems like this is crazy. Like, who the hell's going to release this?
Well, I think it's an extension of the contemporary discussion about net neutrality. So we want the freedom to use the internet as we see fit without regulation, right? We don't want the government intervening and telling us what we can and can't do, and that we should have some level of freedom on the internet. But then at some level, it starts turning into, you can only go left so far until you end back up on the right. And it turns into an issue of, well, we still have to protect people. And then once you get away from the objectivity of it being completely open and you start having issues with how do we control it, it starts becoming a problem, because then we have to determine whose level of subjective ethical guidance do we use in order to set the framework for this.
Right.
And I think that this technology is wrought with it. But it's not because of the issues with all of the adult channels and all the stuff that he's talking about in this chapter. Because reality is, a lot of tech savvy folks give the porn industry credit for the advancement of web-based technologies like online payments, the ability to use soft paying for websites, SSL,
video compression,
all of it.
I mean, the technologies around that was all spearheaded by the porn industry.
Yeah, I didn't make it a $5 billion business by myself. I mean, like, there's got to be other participants. What's happening? So so if I had a choice to release this or not release it, I would not have released it within 48 hours of finding it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of the point I'm making. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that you would want to prevent its release, because by stopping its release, it'd be anti everything that we talked about in the last novel. And in fact, I think you might recall when we were going through Ready Player One of the issues I had was at the end of the book where he's like, the real world's real, like one of your favorite quotes where he's talking about how, it's the only place to get a good meal and that kind of thing. But that really, to me, didn't feel like the message of Ready Player One, which is why I predicted that this one would be about the challenges of the real world. Of course, I was wrong again, but I did predict like this much of the book.
Yeah, you did.
I didn't think it was appropriate to release it that quickly. And I really liked, and I don't want to ruin what we're going to talk about later, as I did like the way that he structured Artemis's character to be the other side of that debate.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen more of that in the book, actually, because to me, the ethical consequences of technology is pretty freaking interesting. And like you talked about earlier, when you're going through and you're looking at this book and, all of that stuff to you sounded like it's not some far off fantastical land. This could happen. And it's what I loved about this book is that we're talking about near fiction tech that should exist in the next 20 years. A lot of technology like the squid tech he references in this chapter exists today. Yeah. That's why I knew that Ernie had done a ton of research to get to this point. It's pretty impressive, I think.
Yeah, it's not much longer, right? So yeah, there was it was always, it's interesting also that Halliday, again, he didn't release it, right? He made a conscious effort not to release this, and he gamified this, which, seems kind of weird, but then it's Halliday, and, he had to write a sequel, so we get it, right? It had to happen. But this triggered at 7,777,777 copies. Suddenly there was a new contest, and we get Halliday's dormant website suddenly has this new riddle that says, seek the 7 shards of the siren's soul on the 7 worlds where the siren once played a role. For each fragment, my heir must pay a toll to once again make the siren whole. And this is, you come to know this quite well as you read the novel because it comes up quite a bit. But the mystery of this whole shard riddle, it goes on for the better part of 3 years before anybody even figures out what the heck he's talking about. And it's funny because people are trying to solve it and they have no idea. And I think Wade says this in the novel, right, in this chapter, that no one even knows like what they're looking for and what the prize is. It clearly says the heir, so that already filters out a ton of people. Yet everybody was playing this game. I like the fact that it brought on new Gunters. He mentioned that, right? I think that one time they were called the Sharders, and they changed their name quickly from that. They probably didn't have the same ring to it. But yeah, it spawned a whole new group of Gunters, and I think the only thing that he got from this riddle was the fact that the siren had to be Kiramaru, right? That was a clear sign of who he was speaking about. But beyond that, there really wasn't a whole lot there to go off of.
Yeah, actually, I thought not to be that guy, because when we read the first book, I had no clue on any of the riddles. I don't know if it's because we've done so much research as part of this podcast, but I nailed this one the first time I read it. I knew exactly what was happening. I mean, it couldn't be more obvious. We did a whole freaking segment where we were just talking through how Holliday's love interests, name and the history of her name and where it came from. I think
we even talked about sirens.
Yeah, we went through you showed pictures of sirens and we went through the whole thing. So when we did it, it was, and the rest of the riddle isn't giving you enough. It's not even a riddle. It's like it's like a prelude. So if you knew who it was talking about as being the siren soul, and then you just read everything else literally, seek whatever the seven shards are from this chick. They're going to be on 7 worlds where this chick once played a role, so areas that were significant in her life. Each fragment, my heir must pay a toll, so something has to be given up. And full disclosure, I still don't know what that is, and I've read the book twice. And then to once again make that chick whole, right? Like if you just knew that, if you knew who the siren was,
You know what's going to happen in the
this
book.
is like the easiest riddle ever. And he's like, "Oh, I'm bashing my brain, bro. Listen to our podcast. He done nailed it by like episode 24." You know, all over it.
Yeah, he didn't have that. I guess we don't make the Oasis later in life. I don't know. So, and so he touches on the social media aspects of this. He mentions that there's an ONI net where people go in and or can rate and do all that, which makes sense. I mean, I imagine that would be the case. But it's a very controlled environment that that Wade is in charge of, and doesn't, you can't just go out and create your own kind of thing and do a black market or third party release of an ONI file or anything like that. So, but yeah, it's, another line in there for less than the cost of an iced latte, you could now safely experience just about anything that human beings could experience. So again, another reminder that this was indistinguishable from reality. But there's one other part in there, and I know there was some feedback that was going around on Twitter, and we don't need to get into that, but
let's not.
Yeah, no, but it's really this idea that, do you think you'd ever want to be in the shoes of your mother as she was giving birth to you?
What in the actual who? What in the dude? That I read that, and obviously that was all over Twitter. No, bro, I have no interest. Like who? What? No, like my wife would not want to relive her own birth of our children. She don't want to hear that. She ain't trying to relive that. Are you crazy? I mean, there's no way. Of all the memories to record, how about you record your parents getting married or something? Bananas. I actually, for me, the technology usage up front was kind of iffy in the description, because when you first read about the Oni headset, you're like, man, think of all the potential, the medical application. And he does get into that later. But right up front, he puts all the creepy stuff. And you're like, bro, what are you doing, man? And I get it. He's a young dude. So, that might be me at that point, in our lives. But really, yeah, no.
I don't know. It's not something I want. No, not really. No, I don't know that I'd want to do that.
You want to experience the birth of your son from your wife's perspective?
No, or like taking at face value, like my mom, like I don't want to be mom and giving birth to me. It's not appealing, but then I got to think, okay, well, maybe it is for some people. But it was just an interesting, like, of all the experiences that Ernie put in here, I wish we could have asked him this. I do want to know, like, what was it about this? Is this something personal? It just, I don't know. It sticks out for me.
Yeah, I thought it was like a shock value kind of. Let me throw in, because the things that go, and I don't mean like shock value from
no, I know what you're talking
him.
about.
What I'm saying is, when you think about the things that go viral or the things that people get into, they're absurd. They're this level of absurdity, like to me anyway. And maybe because I'm just becoming that crotchety old man on the porch. I was just going like, I don't understand planking. And what are these TikTok kids doing? Like, none of it makes sense. Like, how did this become a thing that everyone's doing? And maybe he was just trying to re-express that look, in the future, people are still, the things that people are starting to make popular on these Odie videos are, Rex is crazy.
Right. It's this level.
Yeah. But it did bring up an interesting point. I remember when I was reading this part, I don't know what it was about this part of the chapter that made me start thinking, and I'd like to get your opinion on it, where I'm like, this company is GSS as a whole is starting to feel very Apple to me, in the sense that you're not innovating anymore. You're litigating, and you've basically given the company to 4 folks that have no idea how to build any hardware or software. It's a competent end user who's been given.
Shots fired.
No, like, these dudes don't know how to build things. Like, how are they building product? They know how to make videos, and they know how to make movies, and great movies apparently. But how are you running a software company? It's almost like the whole Willy Wonka experience. What's he doing once he gets in there? Is he throwing boots in the chocolate? Is he throwing candies at the Oompa Loompas and throwing fat kids in the lake? What's happening?
Yeah.
So What's your opinion? How effective, can the High Four be at running uh, a
No,
multinational global corporation that is built on innovation? Right? Like you're just going to
I
have to
mean, you
hire
gotta
the best people.
exactly. That's it. You there. You can't. I'm sorry. Just. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, you think about somebody like Zuckerberg and all that, right? I mean, they were pioneers at a very young age, and that. So maybe you make the argument that they're those kinds of people, but I don't think we get that from the book, right?
No,
It
none of
seems to
that.
me,
None of
right?
them strike me as Zuckerberg-esque. They're not back in people. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Can you think of a major multinational tech company that has a leader who has no background in tech, but has the high score in Centipede? It's like I have that on my resume. I'm just, and I'm not criticizing. I'm just
No,
like,
I get what you're saying,
this
but
will
yeah,
be a real problem for him at some point. And thank God Halliday came back and said, "Hey, I invented this technology." If I was Wade at this point, I'm sitting there going, man, I wonder what's in all these other boxes, because at some point we're going to have to do a product launch.
start opening stuff up to release it.
Just open all these safe deposit boxes on the 42nd floor and tell me what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I would justify it by saying that yeah, he just they would at least have the foresight to say we've got a ton of money and we can buy just about anybody we want to. We can go buy the Zuckerbergs and the Elon Musks and make them work for our company because everybody wants to work there. I mean, he kind of lays the groundwork for that, I think, in the first novel and some to some extent here in this one. So you got to assume that that's what's happening. But yeah, given just them, not feedback to any of them because I love these characters, but yeah, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're kids. They're not capable of running this kind of a corporation. So,
Yep.
all right. So let's. We still got an hour to talk about Memorex. So let's move on here.
Wow.
No, I'm kidding. We're gonna. This chapter ends with Wade finally giving up. He essentially just it calls it quits. Like he's tried so hard to figure out what's going on, try to find a clue. He can't.
In several years. That's over.
Yeah, I mean, it's been
is it three years it goes by, and it's
Yes, it's on the just after the anniversary of the third year for this new video that Halliday put together. That he makes an offer of $1 billion to anybody that can show him where the first shard is. And he says that he says an enterprising young gunter led me to the first shard, and when I picked it up, I set in motion a series of events that would drastically alter the fate of the human race. As one of the only eyewitnesses to these historic events, I feel obligated to give my own written account of what occurred, so that future generations, if there are any, will have all the facts at their disposal when they decide how to judge my actions. And I love the way this ended because it does leave you like, whoa, what the
This is
heck
the best transition between chapters I think Ernie's ever written. This one paragraph, I loved it because it's setting up the novel. Like we've done the preface, we've built it up, we've given you an update on where the characters stand, and this paragraph, and one paragraph lets you know that it's about to go south.
Yep.
It's great.
Okay, and that's how this chapter ends. So let me bring up the pop, and we'll get right back into it. We only got one thing to talk about, and that is Memorex.
Here we go, people.
So here's the quote. I was still truly, madly, deeply in love with Samantha, and I was still reeling from losing my virginity to her just a few days earlier. I didn't want to be didn't want to be unfaithful to her. I figured that cheating was cheating, whether it was live or whether it was Memorex. So, Memorex, it was a company that was around from 1961 to 1996. It's not around today. We'll get into that here in a little bit. It was founded in 1961. By this gentleman over here on the far left. So this is Lawrence L. Spitters. And prior to Spitters living this, before becoming the president of Memorex here, he lived a very lucrative and playboy lifestyle as a, quote, member, and listen to this, as a member of the underwriting and investment banking department engaged in the origination, underwriting, syndication of issues of corporate securities for public distribution, private placement of securities with institutional investors, and evaluation of companies involved in merger and acquisition transactions.
Yep.
So, I mean, talk about boring. This guy's a banker, right? This is essentially what he was.
Nah, I think
he was a treasurer.
Closer to hedge fund management than it is to bank. I mean, he's underwriting securities, so yeah, I don't know. That's actually pretty impressive. Like that's funny. You're like, wasn't that boring? I'm like, wow, this dude is killing it.
I'm not saying he wasn't successful. I'm not saying he was like, worth a lot or had a lot of money, but he obviously was. He was very smart in terms of what he did. But yeah, not just, I don't know. I came from Dimensional Fund Advisors, and I can say their name because I don't work there anymore. But I knew a lot of these guys, and they're not very exciting.
But it's exciting to them. Like I know guys that
Yeah, it is exciting to them.
yeah, it's like like if you've ever seen Vic like debugging like code, and man, when he get to me, it's like the most boring exercise in history. I know it's necessary,
like
but
database
man, he
administration.
it's like he's no. You calm down. We'll have no insults to DBAs on this show. Anyway, when he's debugging code, man, he is amped up, bro. He is fired up. That's his thing. This dude's getting fired up about some underwriting, man.
Well,
when I don't know.
Well, I'm pretty sure Lawrence Spitters wrote this wiki entry. Like it is so like on the nose in terms of what he did to the T. So, but yeah, so he got into this whole magnetic tape business, which is what Memorex started off with a long time ago. After he helped a company called Ampex, which we'll talk about here just very briefly, but Ampex merged with another company called Orr Industries, and he was with them for a little bit. That's where he learned a lot about magnetic tape, and eventually he left this new company along with some people from Orr Technologies in 1961, and they went to go start their own magnetic tape company, and that's what would become Memorex. So, and here's the so Ampex is the company here on the left hand side. This is just an advertisement that they had that they were running at the time. This is Mr. Lawrence Spitter here on the right hand side. This is I actually found a newsletter from like 1962 or something like that. The full newsletter, beginning to end, about hey, there's going to be cookies in the break room at this time or whatever else. And I pulled this picture right here because he was on the front of it. It was kind of like it was actually their very first newsletter that they had ever released for this new company called Memorex. But then down here, you see the Orr Radio Industries Incorporated. That's what would become Orr Industries a little bit later. So it was, again, the merging of these two groups and then him splitting off with a number of other folks to start Memorex's back in 1961.
So were they specifically targeting an Irish demographic? Like what?
No,
like,
I don't.
Why is it?
I think that was like Orr Industries.
Like Irish tape for revolutionary videotape recording. Like why? Why is there a leprechaun in that?
It's all I don't know. It's called Irish Brand. Like, and there's other ones. Like, I found a whole repository of these things of just these one-page ads or handouts or flyers that they created, and this leprechaun is everywhere. I think it was just kind of like their logo.
You were going to say like each one of them was different. And it's like Shiro 18 Asian tape, right? Like Shiro 18 Catholic tape. Like they're like targeting specific demographics. I'm not sure what's going on.
No.
So it's just this guy. Oh, you're going to love me tapes.
This was the precursor to Lucky Charms and Lucky. So, but yeah, they just use them as kind of like this mascot. Okay, so what Memorex is probably well known for outside of the products that they made, and I've got some examples here a little bit later, was this tagline of "Is it live or is it Memorex?" which brings us to the reference from this chapter. And so in 1972, there was an ad agency called Leo Burnett Ad Agency, and they're the ones that came up with the tagline "Is it live or Memorex?" And we're going to come back to this line in just a minute because this campaign started 2 years earlier, back in 1970, with this guy. And this guy here he's an opera singer. His name is Enrico di Giuseppe. I'm going to just call him that, okay?
Doesn't sound Irish to me.
He's not Irish at all. And they hired him because what they were trying to do is they wanted to, there's this old myth out there, and we're going to get into that too. There's an old myth out there that an opera singer,
of course we are,
is able to, you wouldn't expect us not to. So there's opera singers can break glass, right, by singing a certain note. And so this guy actually could do it. And so they actually ran this commercial, and I wasn't able to find the actual commercial. I wasn't able to find the commercial, but I found these stills. I'm telling you, man, I was in like secret documents. Storyboards, essentially.
What in the world?
Yeah, this was all stuff that was released, officially declassified by the government. But here is this is the commercial here. So it says, "Can the human voice shatter the glass?" And then they bring on.
I need you to use the typical voice from the early 70s that would do these commercials. Can the human voice shatter this glass? There, give us
every one of them.
Give it to
amplifying the voice of Metropolitan opera tenor Enrico di Giuseppe as he attempts to reach the precise pitch necessary to shatter glass. He sings. Wow, that's very impressive.
I was getting a sound effect for you.
Yeah, no, he puts a tape in, and then they say, okay, now here's the same pitch, this time with a Memorex tape, and so they press play on it. Okay, that's not necessary.
Not everyone can see your pictures, so we're having to do like radio shows circa 1920 for them.
Okay,
don't forget to drink your Ovaltine.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And so the glass breaks, and you get this tagline. So their tagline originally, before Is It Live or Is It Memorex, was Memorex recording tape, reproduction so true it can shatter glass, which sounds like a sexual innuendo, but it's really not. But this is what they used originally, right? The problem with this ad now, and it's no different than what we're going to see here in just a little bit with the updated version a couple years later. The problem was they stuck this in some really hoity-toity magazines, and like just to like serious autophiles, people that had a lot of money, where you could they were catering to a specific demographic, right?
Like Sky Mall magazine on the plane.
Exactly, right. Like the everyman is not going to be following this. That one, they don't listen to opera, and two, right? It's just they're not reading those magazines, and so they retooled this ad campaign. So in 1972, they enlisted the help of this lady. She's the first lady of song, the queen of jazz, and this is Ella Fitzgerald, right? And as part of the research,
we're covering.
I read a lot.
See what I did there?
Yes, I read I think it's Etta James actually, but
there you go.
That's all right. Etta Fitzgerald. She actually, no, you're gonna like this. She's one of the big scat people. We've talked about scat man Crothers and scat singing, but this is what she's known for. So she was coming off like this amazing career during the 60s. She was a big name still, and they were really like, this is, scat music, and her level of jazz was something that was completely different, obviously, than somebody singing opera. So they got her to come in and do these commercials as well. So same concept.
Scat? What is just like?
Yes. Yep, that's scat.
Broke the glass.
Yeah. No, she didn't do that.
That is not a true story.
So so here's what she said. They asked me to do the ending of How High the Moon. I just kept singing High, High the Moon, doing the ending. And when the glass broke, they said, that's the one. And so they actually brought her into a room, and they wanted her to prove that she could actually shatter glass by singing, which, by the way, Enrico was able to do it as well. It was legit. And there is some science behind it, and we'll get into that in a second. But
there is, but I think she cheated, because part of what's breaking that glass is reverberation. So the dynamics of the room play a role. You could technically do this if we amplified your voice properly. And so she's clearly, unlike Giuseppe, singing into a microphone, giving her an unfair advantage.
No, he was on a microphone too. Look,
was he?
Yes, he's got it right here. He's got the different kind. Come on,
she could have had auto tune on her voice.
Shut up, she did not. So they brought her in, and she did this whole thing, and so the ads at this point, and this is like a commercial here that you can see on the left hand side. It's just a little clip of that, but they used her for these ads for a number of years, and she went on to be kind of like the spokesperson, the poster person for Memorex, and it actually was really successful. I mean, and it's why it's quoted here. And it became more successful as the years went on, which, by the way, we'll get to here in just a second.
You don't have to keep saying that.
I know. Ella Fitzgerald, though, went on to, she actually has, one of the really cool things she did is she actually went on, because of the success of this commercial, she went on to do the KFC commercials of We Do Chicken Right. So much like Roberta Flack, she was showcased in the KFC commercials. So do you remember the tagline of KFC or Kentucky Fried Chicken? We do chicken right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So they had these, and there were other people too. I think there was like the Garland brothers or something like that. I don't know. They had all these famous. I want to say famous.
I think at this point you're officially 3 degrees of separation away from Memorex.
Okay. All right. We'll get back on track.
And now let's get to the Colonel.
Which, by the way, so he was born in. Didn't we cover the Colonel?
We did.
I think we talked about the Colonel on this show.
We've talked about it, but he wasn't a pop culture reference. We just were, again, in the weeds talking about.
Right. Okay. So after she left this whole advertising campaign, they kept it going. And so They got this guy here. I don't know who this guy is. It looks like Will Ferrell. I don't know if you can see that, but it looks like a character that Will Ferrell would play. But he was a rock singer. I forgot to get his name. I don't remember.
I am so disappointed in you.
I know. Well, there was some debate as to who he was. Yeah, no, I'm serious. Like I couldn't get a straight answer.
I was deep into the Reddit.
And then Memorex, they went on to make all kinds of things, and I'll show some products. But at one point they were doing VHS tapes, and so if you can see on the right hand side, their commercial was a clever commercial. I'll give it that. But they were constantly flipping back between what you were seeing on TV, and then they would cut away, talk about it, come back, and then they were like, "Oh, we got you because you're looking at a television now that's running a VHS tape of that same actress," and that's kind of why you see it jumping back and forth like this. To be fair, though, I mean, TVs weren't really high quality back then, so I don't think you were going to be able to distinguish between what was the actual camera and what was on television on a VHS tape. But they did use this, Is It Live or Is It Memorex, for a lot of their products, even after that. Okay, so before we go any further, I do want to make this one. The one thing that just ticked me off to no end as I was doing research on Memorex, people kept using this stinking commercial or the poster for Maxell, right? They use this, and there's videos, there's people that have made posters. I saw people selling T-shirts with this picture that says underneath it, "This is it live or is it Memorex?" And it's like those memes where they've taken Jean-Luc Picard and they mixed it with a Darth Vader quote, and then they say
maybe it's just meta. Like I would wear that shirt because it's ridiculous.
No. Okay, well, maybe for that reason alone. But no, these were genuine people. A lot of folks had used this. So again, I just want everybody to be clear for the sake of our listeners and supporters. When you see this is not Memorex. This is Maxell. Okay? All right, now that we got that out of the way, Mythbusters actually had a television. They did one of the episodes where they try to prove this or bust it. And it turns out this gentleman here on the right-hand side is named Jamie Videra. He's a voice coach and a rock singer. I could not find what rock he was singing, but he's got a website called jamievidera.com if you want to go check him out. And what they found was in order for him to produce this, he had to do a C+, so he's a tenor, but he had a I'm sorry, C+, I'm thinking of program. A C sharp, which is actually programming too, but he had to hit C sharp at 556 hertz at 105 decibels, and after 20 attempts, he was able to break the glass. And when they amplified his voice, that was, like you said earlier, it was a lot easier at that point. But just
there's only two factors in science that affect your ability to shatter glass, and that's frequency and amplitude.
There's actually one more that they found in Mythbusters. Yeah.
Give it to me.
It's the quality of the glass, like the imperfections in the craftsmanship.
Yeah. I meant all things being equal, right? So I wasn't actually referring, the quality of the glass obviously matters, right? The finer it's why you can rate crystal. It's why you're supposed to use the highest, or technically almost the thinnest glass, perfected glass when you're drinking very expensive wines. That's not how we do it in the Wilkins residence. We pop the cork and we get after it. Past the bottle style.
We open up the box.
Like a bunch of pirates crossing the Atlantic.
I'm surprised you're not drinking out of a box. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
I got to be honest. I'm drinking out of a plastic bottle today. Got a little Canadian club going on. Yeah, but you know what? Here's my logic as it relates to whiskey. You only pour the good stuff for the first two, and then after that, what difference does it make? You know, just get after it. We're just getting the plane in the air. It doesn't matter.
Once you're there,
that's
fine.
You're just maintaining. Just keep it up there.
All right. So yeah, this guy did do it. He's broken over like 100 glasses at this point. There's like he can do it. There's a number of other people that can do this as well. So it's not it is true. You can do this natively without enhancing without singing into a microphone. There are people that legitimately can do this, but it is hard. Like even this guy, like I said, he's only done like 100 glasses his whole career. He's failed many, many, many times. So it's just, all the things got to kind of line up for it to happen.
Well, especially on the tape side. So the ability for a human to do this is, as you've talked about, has been demonstrated throughout history. Actually, it's not new news. What's new news is whether or not technology from the 60s and early 70s was advanced enough for you to get that level of quality and reproduction. And then that beyond the tape, let's say the tape was perfect, right? It was master copy class for audiophiles. Would you have the technology that was able to reproduce that sound with the same frequency and amplitude? And the answer is nah, brah.
Yeah.
No.
Nope.
So yeah, you couldn't have done that. Even if this dude recorded his voice back then, played it back on a decent home hi-fi stereo system, it would not have worked. But if you were in a studio and you had like a proper mixing board and you could increase the amplitude while maintaining frequency, you could do it.
Yeah. Okay, so here is this guy know how to party, or where's my thing? Where's my thing? Here we go. This guy know how to party. Okay, now that we got that out of the way. So this is a number of things, and I remember the one that stands out for me are actually three things. Well, no, all of them do. Like I realized as I was doing all this research that I bought a lot of Memorex stuff, and when I went back and looked at kind of the reason why, it was low entry cost. Like
entry cost.
It wasn't the best in terms of quality, but certainly you could buy a crap ton of floppy disks compared to the other guys, right? The IBM stuff or the really name brand stuff from other companies was way more expensive. Same thing with the audio cassettes. Although I did like the audio cassette here, that DBS. When I had this one, it was very 80s looking. I love that. Same thing with the VHS tapes.
Every one of my mixtapes, every mixtape I ever made, my wife when we were dating was made on this exact tape.
Nice.
So when we were in Cuba, well, when I was in Cuba, deployed there, and this is for you kids before you had the internet and your socials, the only way to really communicate was either by letter or to make a tape and then actually make an audio tape and tell her everything that's going on and then mail that to her and she'd mail me one back and some would be awesome. We'll talk about this, but they were always on these tapes. I have several of these in a drawer about 15 feet from me.
Wow.
Like the mixtapes and then the good ones too.
The good ones too. Don't let the kids find those. The VHS tapes. So the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because Memorex. So getting back to kind of where they were, they started off by making magnetic tape, making these floppy disks that you see here on the top. They got into the audio cassette business, and that was where they really made a ton of money. Same thing with their VHS tapes. Again, they were low cost compared to some of the other ones, and they had really cool graphic designs like that. But they went on to make disk drives. They were making IBM mainframe equipment at one point. They did everything here, including like flash memory. They started getting into general electronics. And then in 1981, they were acquired by a company called Burroughs. And I'm going to just throw this up because there's a ton of companies here. And they got bounced around. So in 1981, they were acquired by a company called Burroughs. In 1982, Burroughs sold them. They sold a part of it. So they got kind of splintered up. Sold a division of them out to Tandy, and the same Tandy that we know, we all probably know. And then between 85 and 2006, I mean, they really jumped around. They were just getting sold, patents and trademarks and stuff was just getting, they were just getting completely chopped up. And then finally, when we get to 2006, Imation, which I think I've got on there at the bottom, right? They're pretty well known. They were well known. They bought the Memorex brand for $330 million. So again, this is in 2006. 10 years later, they sold it to a company called Digital Product Innovation or International for $9.5 million. So that's a net loss, I guess, if you want to call it that. I'm sure they got their money back, but in terms of just the sale, you go from buying something for $330 million to selling it for 9.5 10 years later. That's a pretty big change. Pretty big shift.
Or the short, you make a killing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so that's the company right here. So DPI, Digital Products International. And that's where Memorex exists today. That's the logo down there on the left-hand side. And they are a shell of what they were. I mean, it was almost kind of sad as I was going through it. They today make electronics, and they're very, very inexpensive electronics. You can see the Memorex. They make an audio cassette. There's a AM/FM radio tape player. They do a projector. They've got a clock. There was a humidifier. I mean,
They've got a clock.
They got a clock.
They made a clock.
So yeah, and this company is based out of St. Louis, but it's really just the name. Like these guys were making these products already, but they acquired that name for $9 million and then slapped it on there because I guess some people still recognize the brand. I don't know.
I agree with that. That brand still has value. Like if I saw a stack of those old yellow Memorexes, I'd buy them. But mainly because I restored the 92 Ford Tempo in all of its illustrious glory. So I also bought the top 10 cassettes that I listened to in the early 90s. So, it's like Counting Crows and freaking all that kind of stuff that I was listening to at the time. Some Cure. I think there's a Depeche Mode in there. They Might Be Giants. Flood is in there, of course. So I've got that deck. And so my youngest daughter was riding in the front seat of this bad boy with me. We were cruising the strip, which is what we have to do because you can't take it on the highway because
Right.
it won't go 70. It wasn't designed for that.
No.
Speed limit was 50 at the time that I was driving that thing. So she was like, "Oh, is this No Doubt the same No Doubt, with Gwen Stefani?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Let's listen to it." So she grabs the tape, it's in the cover, and starts trying to jam it,
The whole thing
into the tape deck. And she was like, "This thing, it's not even working." Right? So all of my mixtapes are safe, but if I saw Memorex tapes, I would definitely buy them today and probably make a nice romantic mixtape for the missus and send it to her.
Oh, very nice.
Right? I think she'd like that. Probably with the old school tracks that used to make it happen. Talking about a little Key Sweat action, throwing that in there. Talking about a little that genuine.
Okay, easy boy, easy. Yeah. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that kind of brings us to the end of where Memorex is today. Again, they started off as a magnetic tape company. They've ended up as literally just a brand name that they've slapped on a whole bunch of electronics. And it's sad. You go to the website. If you go to Memorex.com, most of these products are not in stock, and there's very little support documentation. I mean, it's just very different. It's a very different experience. So.
Well, maybe because they're rolling over inventory, man. Maybe it's because
maybe it's a Christmas rush. Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is.
Rush. That's what's going on.
Yep.
I'm on there right now. I think I'm going to buy myself a nice clock radio.
I was, no, don't. I wouldn't buy it. Okay, well,
they don't sell the cassettes, bro.
No, they don't. They don't make any of the media. Like they sell no cassettes, no compact discs, no VHS tapes. They sell it. It's ironic. They sell again a tape player and
I'm looking at that.
And they sell that radio there. I mean, there's other things. I didn't include everything on there, but if you
look, all
again,
of these products look like they're available on Wish for like a penny. Like if you just went on Wish and said, just typed in like cassette player, that would come up as the free Wish shipping.
Yeah, minimum purchase of 5 units kind of thing. Well, that's going to do it for the show. I know it was we still got an hour and 37 minutes out of it. But before we get out of here, it is impressive. I did want to mention we did get one review, and I love the subject line of this review. I guess if you call it that, the header. It says "way better than I expected." So thank you for that. It says it's a 5-star review. It says, "I have to admit I wasn't sure what to expect and have found myself loving it every day." So this comes from Diabetic AJ. So thank you, Diabetic AJ, for submitting that review. I'm glad we were to be better than you expected. I will take the feedback and run with it. So, yeah. Anything else? I guess we got a lot of stuff to talk about. We're going to do next week. Well, anything else before we get out of here for, on this chapter or Memorex?
No. I think, I do have quite a bit to talk about, but, I think it's hard because, both of us have read the book multiple times now and kind of already started doing our deep dives in each of the chapters. It was odd because originally this was supposed to be the chapter that we did with Ernie. We were going to do Cutscene as a separate episode and do this. And then there just wasn't enough pop to make it happen.
Right.
We were like, dude, this show is going to be just you talking about Memorex for an hour. Hey, guess what? That's exactly what happened. But the next few chapters, we don't have too many chapters through Ready Player 2 that are light on pop. So we will have that. What I didn't get was your, say, 2-minute book review. Neither one of us have really sat down and said, here's my book review of Ready Player 2. Right. And I actually thought about doing this as a separate release, right? Like not doing this. I'm going to do like a 5 or 10-minute book review of Ready Player 1 and then send it to you to post.
Okay.
As like a supplement. You should do the same.
I'll think about it. I don't do reviews. Even when we talk about like on the other show, Cantina Cast, I don't really review things. We don't review episodes. And I don't know. I'm just weird about it. I mean, I don't mind. I'd be willing to do it. Maybe as a Patreon thing, but yeah, I'm willing to do it.
I'm definitely doing it because
I know you do. Oh yeah,
yeah. And it's not so much that I you know me. I have listened to and read virtually every review of Ready Player 2. and some of them are flames, and some of them are. There's very few that I consider objective. I don't mean positive versus negative. I just mean purely objective about the writing style. And, I think to some degree, a lot of the press has just been bad press for the attention of getting bad press. But I'll talk about it in my review. I'll get it back to you.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it. Well, we've talked about it, but I still am looking forward to it. So yeah, we'll be back next Wednesday. Let's see. We've got Huey Lewis and the News back in time. We're going to talk about the Panasonic RC6015. I don't know who's got that one, but that sounds exciting. We'll talk about Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Peter Weller, Wakanda, Indiana Jones. I think we're going to anchor on Temple of Doom, which I'm really excited about doing.
Oh, it's go time.
So it's going to be a lot of quotes from Short Round, and probably only quotes from Short Round.
So we just, full disclosure, once off camera, Albert and I spent just like 20 minutes just doing Short Round quotes to each other and laughing hysterically. And then we were like, can you even do this now? Can we even do Short Round quotes? Will you just get banned from social media?
I don't know. It's risky.
Because there's no way to do it without the accent. There's no way it can be done. It's
all right. Well, buckle up. We'll see how that goes. Okay, we're going to get out of here. We'll be back next Wednesday. Thank you for everybody that joined us for the live show. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, listen and subscribe to the podcast. I'll get this out to Patreon in just a couple days, and then expect this, I think, Monday or Tuesday of next week. So until then, we'll see you guys next week.
The views and opinions of the Basement hosts are of our own and are not in any way affiliated with Random House or Ernest Klein. All quotes, music, sounds, trademarked, and copyrighted material referenced in the show are owned by the respectful companies and creators and are used by the Basement as fair use for entertainment purposes only. It would take me a month to read this whole disclaimer, but sad to say, I don't have that kind of time.